Food. If so, the On the Road to Healthy Living Mobile Cooking School is for you. Call Amy Ressler at Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service at 936-539-7825 to find a class near you or volunteer to host a class.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KCCZ LP Conroe and worldwide at irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and you are listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I'm Rick Schisler. I'm your host. I'm also a Silver Fox advisor and the founder of OneBestConsult.com. Thank you for joining us today. I think we put together another good show for you. In fact, some people might even say great. How about that? Pat myself on the back real fast on that one. We're coming to you live from downtown Conroe, Texas, which is located, if you don't know, in Montgomery County. Conroe is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, kind of goes back and forth over the last few years, growing cities in America. It's amazing what's happening here. The growth is all around you. In fact, on my way to the studio today, I had to stop and wait because they took the road down to one lane because they were increasing the size of the road. That's happening everywhere. And that was out in the country on a farm to market road. So we're in a place that we see business happening, but we recognize that other places in our country might not be as fortunate. So we try to touch on topics from time to time that relate to that. And one of those topics I'm going to touch on right now. Been talking about this all year. Where's the recession? You know, I love it. Last fall, we began to hear noise from different people, different organizations. Boy, a recession's coming. It's going to be a bad recession. And then they pass, a $1 trillion bill in Congress and spend more money, which common sense and basic economic theory says, well, that's got a real potential to really make things worse one way or the other, particularly inflation. And inflation, recession, boy, those words can eat up a small business. There's no doubt about it. Where's the recession? Well, I love it. Over the weekend, I read a couple articles. Of course, these were from the big guys in New York and Chicago, and now they call it a rolling recession. I still haven't caught on to what a rolling recession, other than it rolls across the country. So what are you going to do? And we talk about that, and I'm going to touch on something later in the program. One of my topics, question for the day, will touch on that directly. I believe the recession is not rolling. It's hiding in plain sight. It's affecting us. It has to, because we buy products and services that are directly impacted, both as consumers and as businesses, that come from all over the country, all over the world. A lot of times we don't know where it comes from. And if they're in a recession or they're facing uncontrollable or high inflation, the price of their product, the delivery, remember the supply chain issues, they're still out there if you look for them. They're still happening to small businesses. There's no doubt about it. The thing that I find interesting, though, and this is just a personal note, we've got a labor force, particularly in this area, and I know other areas of the country, you can't find good people. I mean, unemployment is down. Nationally, though, it's up. It just doesn't make sense to me. But the key thing for all of us, I believe, is where's your revenue? Is it up? Is it down? And there are even people here in the fastest growing city in America. The revenue is under pressure. It's dropped, not just during the pandemic, but there's still other businesses continue to grow. I work with a CEO roundtable, and every one of our members, which could be why they're the people at the table, their businesses continue to grow primarily at double digits. So it's kind of a favored person in these things. You get the favor of having a particular business, particular industry, and you seem to be doing okay. But the key is it's a new game in town. Recession now is kind of like one of those whack-a-mole things. It pops up here, it pops up there, and you try to quash it and it'll pop up somewhere else. So it's very localized. Well, the impact of recession, like inflation and all these other things, impacts different communities, different areas, different industries, different products, services, always different. And that's a matter of degree. Here, you've got one place, like here in Conroe, where you don't even find it anywhere. You don't see it. It's not anywhere out there, except the occasional business that may be impacted because their industry is being impacted. But other parts of the country, all the businesses in town are affected, or some of them. It's just interesting how it's playing out. And I personally believe the main culprit is we're plugged into an international economy. We're in a world economy. And our buying of goods and services, supplies and things is so impacted by what's going on in the rest of the world. If you don't believe me, hold on. The Saudis just announced a 1 million barrel cut in the price of oil. Watch your gas pump in your local area over the next few weeks and see if that doesn't have an impact. Well, the weekly business hour, as I try to tell you each week, is where Montgomery County and businesses, in fact, throughout the world now come to talk about the latest in business news, ideas to improve their business, and be part of conversations that we believe can make a real difference in your business even today. So again, we thank you for being with us, and we appreciate your contribution. Along those lines, if you hear or see something, since we're in a video cast as well, that you would like to comment on, a suggestion for the show, or you've got a particular business challenge that's personal to you and your business, please send me an email. I love to get the emails. We go to that email bag, or mail bag as we call it from time to time, and pull out one of those inquiries about your business challenges and talk about it on the air. It's real simple. Just send me an email right here to the station Lone Star Community Radio at Rick, R-I-C-K, at irlonestar.com. That's Rick at irlonestar.com. And before I forget, if you want to watch us, Allen and I are here today. You can see our faces as we talk. It's available live right now on Facebook and YouTube Live. Just go to the Weekly Business Hour page, and you can click on it and watch as well as listen to the program. I invite you to do so. It's amazing how many listeners that we have each week that watch us on Facebook Live. Well, let's get rolling with the program today. Enough of that introduction. We have a very, very special guest. He's a return guest, but he's wearing a different hat today. He's in a different business today. In a business, frankly, it appears he's been in all his life, and we didn't know it. So we're going to have a reveal today. What do you think? I want to welcome Allen Crosby. He's the owner of Living Images Photography. Allen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Rich.
Well, we're going to talk about photography. The last time you were here, we talked about remodeling, home remodeling, and a business that you and your son were working on. And you just informed me, unfortunately, that business took a real hit during the pandemic, and your son has decided to seek other, hopefully greener pastures. So you reverted to something based on your background that you sent me that you've had a passion for a lot of years, and that's photography. Tell us a little bit about your business journey.
Well, you know, photography's always been a passion. It started back when I was in college as a hobbyist, and just playing around with it. I've, showed a lot of my work to friends and so forth. And of course, kids in college, I'm getting married this weekend. Would you do my wedding photography, or could you take a portrait for me so I can send it back to my parents? Things of that nature. And I was working at a camera store at the time, and a friend of mine that worked there also worked at a local studio. And he said, do you mind if I show some of your work to my boss? And I'm like, no, that's fine. And before I knew it, I was doing freelance wedding photography for about 4 different studios in the city. And it grew from there. As a lot of young people do, things stop being fun and they start being work. And so I dropped it for a while. But a number of years ago, back probably 2004, I picked it up again and began to work at it on a professional level, doing weddings, doing a lot of modeling work and things of that nature. But a lot of what I've done in the last 20 years is has been focused more on, wildlife photography, shoreline photography, nature photography, landscape, and things of that nature. But that's been a real passion of mine. And moving into semi-retirement, I was looking for something that I could do that would give back to the community and to the public of what I saw and carry on my passions.
Photography. I mean, there's a lot of hobbyists out there. That industry went through a major shift, or still going through it, I guess, from film to digital, opening new doors, and even digital now starting to, with mirrorless cameras. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. And most importantly, our iPhones or our cell phones all have these cameras. This one's kind of old-fashioned. It only has 2 lenses. New ones have 3 lenses. And I took a picture on here the other day of my grandson fishing. I said, my God, that's a pretty darn good quality, the focus and everything. And I didn't do anything but snap it. You know, lots of things going on in the world of photography. You chose photography because why? It was your passion. I mean, but now you're turning it into a business, or you have had it as a business.
Yeah,
Big difference.
I actually owned my studio for a number of years in the Clear Lake area, and doing portraits, headshots, traditional professional work. I've also had some of my artistic work in a couple of different galleries. But you mentioned the transition. Actually, this is the second transition that has happened, because if you think back to the, years of the Renaissance and so forth, painters like, for example, Velázquez and Rembrandt, they were painting images that looked lifelike and realistic. And you could reach out and touch them. They looked like your neighbors. But when the camera was invented, the camera started capturing images that they were painting. So the surrealists began to venture in and began to paint things that people couldn't see. People like Van Gogh and Miro and some of those began the abstract form of painting that we see now in a lot of ways, things that the eye couldn't capture necessarily, but the mind could. The same thing has happened a second phase now, where you had professional photographers that did all the work. Now everybody, like you said, has got a camera on their phone, and everybody perceives themselves as being able to take a good photograph because they have a good camera. Well, that's like saying I'm a great chef because I have a good stove. But it's the idea. It's not the mechanics. It's the actual eye that makes the difference. Some of the best photographs were captured by Ansel Adams in an old box, camera of photographing Yosemite. So it's not the actual camera itself, although we can take some great photos. It's the eye of the photographer who can visualize and see things that other people can't see.
Which is just like the artist who paints or sculpts or some other form of expression.
Exactly.
They see something that you and I, as you say, we don't see it. And I think that's a really interesting observation by you, and the fact that photography, again, professional photography, requires that. I mean, and I guess if you're a hobbyist and you're trying, which it's all about improving your eye, right? I mean,
it is just being able to see it. And the only time people really hire a professional photographer now is to go out and take photos that they can't do for themselves, like a wedding. And you have to, you can't take the photos and be in the photos at the same time easily. And if you're going to take those photos, you need to get them right the first time. Now you've got all kinds of things that you can do after the fact. You can open people's eyes. You can put a smile on their face. Artificial intelligence is going to actually change that. What's the next phase? Are we going to have holodecks like they do on Star Trek? They'll be able to do holographic images, and so it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. But for me, my lifetime is finite. And I wanted to take my body of work and put it in a form that could pass on a legacy, so that people could have a remembrance of what I did while I was here.
Right. Well, that's typically a goal of most people. What is my legacy? How do I leave it? What form is it? Is it written? Is it, And I think that's interesting. Back up for a second with me.
Okay.
A lot of folks don't realize, because we're here talking about business, and a professional photography is a business. It's a professional business,
Right?
Like lawyers, doctors, architects, engineers. They're professionals, and a photographer is a professional. There are a lot of different kinds of photography out there, professional. Share kind of a quick list with our listeners, so they may know it, but they may not.
Well, professional photography, ranges everything from commercial photography where people are taking photographs of a business, buildings, maybe a plant of some type, or even parts that are being shipped out that you go on the internet, you see photographs of everything you want to buy. So somebody has to photograph that item. So there's the commercial side. There's also the portrait side where people, they need headshots, they need a professional portrait, they want a family portrait of some type, and they want it to come out great with brilliant color, brilliant clarity. Then you also have wedding photography. I cut my teeth doing a lot of wedding photography, and when I went back into wedding photography, the weddings went from a 3 or 4 hour wedding session to now the average wedding starts in the middle of the day and ends at the middle of the night. It's 12 hours on your feet, and the older I get, the less I'm inclined to do any type of that type of work. But it's a high demand, and you have to have somebody who can get it right the first time. And, what happens when, you're halfway through the wedding and you drop your camera? Do you have backup material, equipment? Do you have more than one photographer who's taking more than one angle? So there's a lot that actually goes into that, the professional side of it.
That's interesting. And then you have your wildlife, nature, fine art photography, which is a field I really love to see what people are able to create with a camera.
It is. And now with the camera, you can actually do almost as much after the fact with the digital capabilities as you could before. I remember one of the popular things when I was doing portrait photography, when I first began using 35 millimeter film, was doing a portrait and maybe having a silhouette of another person up in the corner. You probably remember that face. And the only way you could do that without overlaying two negatives was to take the photograph, roll the film back to the exact spot, which is not easy to do, and take a second exposure on the same negative. And so, now you can do that very easily digitally. So a lot of things, I had to relearn photography in a lot of different ways.
Well, and in the creativity part as well. I mean, geez, but that brings me to a question. I mean, every business has challenges, but also has tools to meet those challenges. And in photography, one of the things that always interested me is I consider it almost an ethical challenge of, okay, I took the picture. Now I'm going to go put it in and use some software like Photoshop, and I will completely, or have the capability of completely altering the picture. Where's the getting on and getting off? I mean, to me, that's taking the picture and just developing it more or less as it was taken. That image that I saw is one thing, is one kind of photography. To me, when you go to Photoshop and recreate it, take somebody out of the photo or whatever. Is there a getting on and getting off point there, or is it just accepted it's all in one big pot?
To me, it's more of and this is a personal view, it's more of an ethical thing.
Right.
Where do I draw the line saying this is something that I created or something that a computer created? And there are times that, I don't mind, graphically enhancing something to the point that it enhances the color, brings it out a little more clearly, brightens it up, something, crop it differently, things of that nature. But I don't like to change it do extreme changes. I've done a few that I've used filters on and so forth just to enhance the photo. I did one, I remember when I was in Southern California, and it's in the book that I'm doing. Was out on the beach with all the cliffs and the sunshine, and sun was going down, and the sun was shining through the water spray as the water was crashing on the rocks, and I was trying to catch that that luminescent glow of the water. I was about 200 yards away from a cropping of rocks, and I caught a photograph, and I said, "This is going to be great." And when I got it back home, and I got it on the screen, what I didn't see when I snapped the photo was that about another 200 yards behind that spray of water was also another cliff with a small cave, and in that small little cutout cave of the cliff was let's say that it was a couple in an amorous moment. And to keep the photo PG rated, I did go in and edit out those two people out of the scene. But other than that, I try to keep it as close to the original as I can.
Right. That's a great story. And that is one thing when you take a picture to take in everything.
Right.
I mean, because I know, and I do, I'm a hobbyist. I don't even know if I've qualified as that, but to see that whole thing and what's through the range of the view, and it's you don't see everything many times, because then you sit down and look at it, blow it up a little bit, and wow, it's amazing, some things. So I get that. I obviously probably a really good call to take that out. Alan, believe it or not, we're to the point we need to take a break, commercial break for the station, and give credit to our sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll stay with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about Alan's new business, or kind of a shift in a way to maintain or create his legacy. And I think you'll be very interested on what he's done. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
Our talk shows and music shows are looking for sponsors. Want to expand your brand awareness? Reach the hyperlocal audience in Montgomery County? Lone Star Community Radio sponsorships accomplish this. Want to see our stats and rates? Check out ourlonestar.com/sponsor for more information. Or call in and leave us a message at 936-647-3776 with your questions. Get seen on TV, YouTube, and heard on our podcast, FM, and internet radio. Support your local radio station with Lone Star Community Radio.
Statistics show that 1 out of every 6 Texans struggles with food insecurity and hunger. And many people don't eat enough fruits and vegetables every day. The Better Living for Texans program is here to help you learn how to make healthy menu choices, save money at the grocery store, prepare quick and delicious meals, get more good nutrition in your day, and get more physical activity. Classes are fun, friendly, interactive, and free, and taught in English and Spanish. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
Hey y'all, it's DJ Mike from Dance Time in Texas. Join me Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. as I count down the top 10 Texas Red Dirt songs that are packing the dance floor. I'll be featuring local artists and the story behind the hits, shows in the area, as well as new songs that make you want to dance. It's Dance Time in Texas with DJ Mike on Lone Star Community Radio, 104.5 KCZW and 106.1 KZCC, Conroe, Texas, or online, irlonestar.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You've been listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I'm Rick Schisler. I'm your host, and we've been having what I think is a real fun but helpful conversation with Allen Crosby about the field of photography and how it is a business. Very interesting. Lots of tools, lots of options. And we're going to kind of shift to what I call an option, and something that Allen creatively has got a new tool in his toolbox, so to speak, and that's taking photography and putting it into a book. A book about photographs. Now, before you turn the dial, it's not boring. It's a very interesting concept. So we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about, because I look at this as a way to transition your business. As Allen has shared with us, semi-retirement transition times here. This is a way that every business has these options. They're all a little bit different, but there are ways to transition your business. And I want to listen and hear and have a conversation with Allen to see how it's going for him in transitioning his business, so to speak. So, Allen, you're creating a lasting legacy, something you mentioned earlier, alluded to something that'll be there when you're gone, and that is a book. Talk to us about how you came up with the idea of taking your photography and putting it in a print form and binding it together. Talk to us and tell us about this option you've created.
Well, it started about a year, actually more than a year ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago. And this is a kind of a prequel to the book we're talking about. But I heard a lot of friends talking about, when I get close to retirement, or when I retire, I'm going to move to Costa Rica and live out my retirement years. I'm going to move to Panama or Portugal or wherever around the world, and that's where I'm going to spend my retirement years. And I actually lived in Madrid, Spain for about 10 years and raised my family there. And I knew what it was like to go to a place you'd never been before, and not just go there for a vacation for a couple of weeks, but to live there, to have to survive, learn a new language, adapt to a new lifestyle, adapt to, different way of life, new foods, new government, the whole 9 yards. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, these people have no idea what they're about to get into. And it dawned on me to actually put it down into words. I'd never thought about writing a book before. And so I wrote a book about our experiences and all the good and the bad and the ugly that happened. In fact, I entitled it The Allure of, the romantic lure of living abroad, the fantasy versus the reality. Still available on Amazon. And it's a short little book, but it describes and goes through all the experiences that people go through as they adapt to a new culture. And, it was focused to a particular crowd. So like I like to say, there are tens of copies in circulation out there now of that particular book. But, within the last year, I got to thinking, I'd like to do another book, but I couldn't figure out really what I wanted to do. And then it dawned on me, I've got all this, immense volume of great photography that I've done. And I've had it in galleries before, and you put something in a gallery and it sits there for 6 months and nobody buys anything. And I'm thinking, this is a way to put it into the hands of anybody who wants it, to be able to guard and have it and I'm putting it into the form of a coffee table book. And it will be, actually, this particular book will be the first in a series of coffee table books. And so I'll be doing, more as time goes on.
Well, that's interesting, and that's a great story. How you basically did the book, right? You've been through that process, but in turn you've taken, again, I think it's so neat to take what you've done, what you're good at, right, and then be able to take it and do something else. It makes for a neat transition, and I contend that every business pretty much out there, even if I'm a plumber or electrician, there are things I can do when I want to make that transition.
Right.
I mean, I can sell my business, and we talk about that a lot, exit strategy. But there are things you can do as an electrician to transition your business. For an example, we had a good friend some years ago, and a guy who did some work, and he had a business, electrical business, had service trucks, had everything. And then he sold it, but he wanted to keep being an electrician. So he just went in the neighborhood and let everybody know he was available, and he became the neighborhood go-to guy.
Yeah.
And everybody knew him. He'd have a cup of coffee. I bumped into him at a donut shop down the street one day, and you just chat. He was your friend. But he got a chance to keep doing what he loved to do. He transitioned and used his skills, and he had his license. And I always thought that was interesting. And then he went on and bought buildings that needed some work, office warehouses, things like that, and refurbished them and rented them out. And he says, now when I stop being an electrician, then I have a source of income. But he used his skills as an electrician and ability to do other work to refurbish those buildings.
Well, you talked to a few minutes ago about how things transitioned in photography. You and I probably come from close to the same era. My experience in photography when I was a child was a big box in my mother's closet that had this huge collection of photographs from who knows when, back in the, all the way back to the early 1900s. And you would sit there and go through it. Who is this, Mom? Who is this? And you go through a family history, and it was like browsing through your own museum, so to speak. Now, how many prints actually, or how many photographs actually make it to print that you take as a person, or hundreds on your phone? And if something were to happen to me, God forbid, one day it will, but my computer, my phone, all of that's going to disappear into a digital, some type of digital hole and not be retrieved. But to put it in this form gives you the opportunity to create a legacy that will live well beyond your years.
I remember the little black and white photos from Kodak with the scalloped edges, right?
Exactly.
Or they were in a little book,
Exactly.
A little folder with a yellow. Anyway, so yeah, that's how you got history. Because hopefully you got a story. Because the face didn't mean anything to you, but when you said, "Who's that?" and then they would tell you the story about Aunt Emma or whatever and who they were, and it was I enjoyed that opportunity as well. Let's talk about the book a little bit more and how you go about it. I mean, you're taking your skill set. We've talked about that. You're taking your passion. Now you're going to extend that and coffee table book series. The first one is titled
It's called
Seascapes?
Seascapes.
Okay, and that's obvious what that might be.
It is actually a collection of work in and around the ocean or waterfronts. I lived in Clear Lake for about 20 years. During that period of time, I took a short jaunt to and worked in Southern California for about 3 years and gave me exposure to the West Coast. For about 3 years when I lived in Clear Lake, I actually lived on my boat. So I actually lived on the water on Clear Lake and have lived in Galveston as well. So it comes from that area of experience and the collection of images from that time.
So it's living experience is what it is.
Exactly.
Did you ever make it to the Atlantic? I'm just curious.
To the Atlantic, I've been to the Atlantic,
But I mean,
never
as far
lived
as
there.
living, yeah.
No, never lived there.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're all different, right? The seascapes in all of them.
Very.
The opportunity to photograph. What are some of the things you're going to be offering in the future, just so people get an idea? You got the Seascapes book. You mentioned it was part of a series.
Yes.
What will the next books potentially look like?
I don't know exactly what order they will be in, but one of the themes that I'm focusing on is given my background in Spanish history, living in Spain, are the Spanish missions in Texas. Some of us, when you think of the Spanish missions, you think of the Alamo, of course, but in San Antonio alone, there are 6 Spanish missions. If you go down the old mission trail, they date back to the earliest times that Spaniards were here, the explorers were here in the state. But in the state of Texas, there are over 150 Spanish missions.
Oh, wow.
Some of them were destroyed. You can go to the site where they were, but there's no structure that's there. But there are over 150 Spanish missions that were established in the state. Also would like to do one on West Texas. I graduated high school in Northwest Texas on farming or ranching territory. I had 35 people in my class. Very small community. My brother still lives there. Oh, he's a rancher. I want to go back and capture the images that are what compose the West as it's still with us. And there's a lot there that people are still doing on a routine basis that's been done the same exact way for hundreds of years.
Right.
So I want to go back and capture that, as well as do some extensive travel, maybe even going back to Spain again. I took a lot of photographs when I was there, but they're all on 35 millimeter slides, and that doesn't make a great photograph. So I want to recapture some of that, maybe spend a year or so there. But that's the plan for the next books, and perhaps do about one a year.
I'm listening to you and the way you've put this together, and again, an encouragement to any one of our listeners that owns a business to consider this. If some people just want to, as you mentioned, they want to move to Costa Rica and they retire, and I get that. To me, when you've built a business and you sell the business, the choice is yours. But then there are those of us who are still wanting to extend what they've developed or learned and share it and all that.
Right.
We have a guest that he comes on the show once or twice a year, Hank Moore. And Hank started out in radio when he was 10 or 11 years old there in Austin.
Wow.
With the Johnson family, LBJ's family bought a radio station. And he just happened to offer, and he came in sweeping floors, and then they put him on the radio as a true disc jockey for an hour. And
oh, wow.
So it went from there, and he became a well-known disc jockey. And when the rock and roll and all that was coming, and he's met everybody you can think of, Elvis, the Beatles, emceed shows. But then what he's done, and then he worked as he went to college and ended up being an international business consultant with lots of contacts, because he stayed close to the family. So what he did, he's written a series of books, and that's where I'm going with this long story. And it's interesting to me. So he's written 6 or 7, I know I'll get the number wrong, business books. And they're about different phases of business, and they're geared towards any type of business, corporate, big company, small company. But they're a series, and I was thinking about your series. And now he's done one, and he's on his second book of pop music legends and talking about that industry and individuals. Well, he's been nominated 8 times now. I think I got it wrong last time, for Pulitzer Prizes on these books as he's written them. And so he is, like you, turned his life, his history into a series of quality books on business and other books. He's written other books that were more like MBA program at Texas used one of his books. It's not in this series, but he wrote those kind of, and he's got some great books. Those are as well, but they're more scholarly. But these series of books are so much, and they're fun when you just look at them to read. So, and he's going to continue with the pop. I mean, he's got this plan. Sounds like you to, keep rolling that out. So, people do this.
Well, and you were talking about photography. We were talking about the big box of photographs and how it's transitioned. And you have all these photographs. A lot of people now are transitioning and even taking those photographs that they have and creating, actual books. There are some real low-end publishers out there that like some of the photography websites. You can actually put those in a book, make a family album to give it away to your family for Christmas, and they will publish them for next to nothing or very low cost, and put them into print. It's a great way to preserve those images.
Right. Yeah. There's lots and lots of options. And again, I respect and admire what you're doing, what Hank does, and others do to take those skills, the neighborhood electrician, and continue and have a plan, though. It's not something they just fall into and use it, because I think that's the way it was intended to be.
Well, I think the pandemic gave me a pretty good indication of what it would be like to retire and not have anything to do.
I think millions probably felt that. Yeah, that's an interesting observation.
So I wanted to keep busy, wanted to keep my skills active, but at the same time I wanted to, contribute and, do something that I could take with me, when I begin to travel and so forth, that is totally portable.
Right. No doubt about that. Book release. Tell us about the book itself. When's it coming out? The first book, Seascapes.
The book release is scheduled for the 1st of July. We're actually doing a pre-sale right now on the books where someone can order the book at a lower price than it will actually be available online when it actually is released. We're giving a discount to pre-sales. So if you order the book now, then you can have the book, and once you receive the book, it will be an autographed copy. And when you go through the book and you find an image you love, we'll include with that a free print that's suitable for framing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so,
unique offer.
It'll be 11 by 14 print that, you can put in a frame. But that's all part of that package on the pre-sale between now and July the 1st.
Now, how do people take advantage of that? Where do they go?
They can go to my website, which is Living Images Photography, virtual. It's a virtual gallery. It's called Living Images Photography. I think it's a virtual gallery. Okay. And they can go there and get the information there, or get the information directly. If they want to email me, that's fine. I'm at Living Images Photography, TX as in Texas, .gmail.com.
And the website, I assume, is .com?
Actually, I'm using the Facebook page as my landing page at this point.
Okay, so go to Facebook and look up Living Pages Photography.
Living Images Photography.
Images.
Yes,
Sorry
sir.
about that.
No worries.
Trying to work. Well, I got it written down. See, that's
Okay,
what's important
there
to
you
me. I got it written down. Well, absolutely. That's something I'm personally interested in seeing. And before we sign off here and end our conversation today, what brand of equipment do you use? I'm just curious.
I actually use a Canon Rebel EOS. I don't use a lot of people think, like I said before, the higher end camera I have, the greater photos it's going to take. To a degree, that's true, but the megapixels that are coming out today, when you can shoot at 25 and 30 megapixels or more, I can remember when I could blow up something that would cover a wall on a photograph that was done with 6 megapixels.
Right.
So the detail and the quality that you get, again, is partially in the camera, but a lot of it's in the eye.
Well, and the fact is now it's packaged at a price point that a lot of people can afford it.
It can. If you go into the professional level, you're going to spend several $1,000s to get, $2,000 to $3,000 to get the camera, the equipment that you would like. But you can start as little as less than $1,000 now.
Well, that Rebel
$400 or
package,
$500.
definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm a Canon man myself.
Yeah.
So's Dick. So anyway, Alan, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story of the business of professional photography, and quite a surprise, the ability to extend that business in a new phase of your life. I wish you all the luck, and thank you for sharing it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our bottom of the hour break, a little past the bottom of the hour, but that's great. We have a couple things coming up for you in the second half of the show. First of all, the question of the day, where is the money? Or better said, why can't I borrow any? And then our one best consult tip of the week. We keep working on this one, tend to run out of time, lest you forget about those challenges that no one is talking about. I'm talking about small business challenges in 2023. There's several that you need to be aware of that nobody out there is talking about. So we'll try to touch on that as well today if we have the time. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
A Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question or comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station at irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
Every Friday, tune into Texas Ticket on Conroe's 104.5 and 106.1 FM with Armando Nino of Gold Lake Conroe, focusing on Montgomery County area events and places. Get a feel of the Texas spirit at the event, paired with guest and vendor interviews, event coverage, and ticket giveaways, and so much more. Join us Fridays and punch your Texas Ticket. For more information on the show, visit irlonestar.com/Texas Ticket.
Did you know that there are over 153 million orphans in the world today? The sad reality is 99% of those kids will likely never be adopted. Core Love is an organization right here in Conroe that takes care of orphan children in Haiti, Honduras, and India. We bring the love of Jesus by providing their 6 basic needs of clean water, proper food, healthcare, education, job skills, and a loving home. Visit corelove.org, that's CORELUV.org. Will you help defend the orphan?
Does your company have needs that can be met by an employee who is dependable, hardworking, enthusiastic, motivated, cooperative, respectful, and punctual? Conroe Independent School District Special Education Department can meet your needs by connecting you with potential employees that have been preparing for a lifetime of employment. We have numerous individuals seeking paid and unpaid work experiences. If your company is interested in seeing how we can meet your business needs, call Conroe ISD Special Education Department to find the best employees for you at 936-709-7671. At 936-709-7671.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I'm Rick Schisler, and I'm proud to be your host of the program here today. I want to remind you once again, if you have a comment about the show or you have a challenge in your business, we'd love to get those because that's what I do. I'm a business advisor. I actually mentor a CEO roundtable of really smart, successful business people here in the Conroe area. So send us your challenges, your comments, suggestions. Very simple. Send it to Rick, R-I-C-K, at irlonestar.com. That's Rick at irlonestar.com. Okay, where's the money? That reminds me of that old slogan, where's the beef? Most of us will remember that. Well, where's the money? The fact is that the banks are tightening their requirements. Now, some size banks more than others. And I caught a great article this weekend that kind of capsulized a lot of it. Ruth Simon writes in the Wall Street Journal, and her articles relate particularly to smaller businesses. And I always find them very interesting, very to the point, lots of support in statistics and facts for what she comments on. And I encourage you, if you want to follow somebody that can give you an article once a week just to look over on topics that definitely have impact on your business. You may not even realize it. But what's happening with the banks just to kind of put it all down in a small package, is we've had some big banks fail, and everybody should be aware of that and the impact, and say, well, that doesn't bother me. I'm here in Conroe, Texas. But it does. It reverberates through the system. And what's happening is the banks, particularly in this case, the medium and local banks, at this point are tightening up their lending requirements. They're tightening up the number of loans they make. And see, tightening these lending standards and requirements, you can still get a loan in some cases from these banks, but you're going to pay a very high price. And that was one thing I was really surprised. Some of you may have known it. I felt kind of out of touch. But over the last year, interest rates have doubled and tripled. I knew that the inflation rate had gone up that much, but according to Ruth and some of the folks that she interviewed for this article, people are paying 11% plus for their borrowing, their line of credit, things like that, operating loans, that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting. But what concerns me most for you and for everyone out there is being able to locate and find the money you need, either to expand your business or your line of credit that you draw down when business slows down, and it may have slowed down in the same months, same period of time for the same reasons for years. But still, getting that line of credit is a little more difficult. There are businesses that are having their lines of credit cut back because their revenues dipped somewhat, and it's just amazing. So it becomes a situation where, one, you find it more difficult to get a loan. You're getting your credit lines, et cetera, cut. Stricter terms are being put on you. Obviously, higher borrowing costs. The banks are making more because they're paying more for their deposits. You got longer waits to get the loans completed, and you get a lot tougher questions from the banks. That is not universally true, but it is true in many areas of the country. Generally speaking, the banks are being a lot more conservative, responding to the slowdown in certain businesses and their sales. The same thing applies to real estate loans. You want to expand your business, you want to build a new building, you want to build another building, you want to add on, whatever it might be. There are companies now that had these plans in place, because usually you don't just decide one day to go build something. You talk about it, you think about it, you hire somebody to draw it up for you, you look at the whole picture for a period of time, a year or two, sometimes longer. Now you go to the bank and you've got it all set up. You've talked to the banker before. You've been given even a price sheet, offer sheet on the terms and this, and you find out it doesn't apply anymore. It applied 6 months ago, but it doesn't apply now. The rates have gone up. The collateral's gone up. There's all kinds of things that are happening. In the article, Ms. Simon reported, based on a release from the Federal Reserve Board in May, that nearly half of the banks, all sizes, reported stricter loan standards for small business in the past 3 months. And more than half said they expect to tighten those lending standards further in 2023. So if you're in the market and you want to borrow money, you may need to borrow money, okay, to get through a slowdown or something. Be careful. I mean, you need to prepare as far as in advance as you can. In another survey conducted by Goldman Sachs recently, 77% of small business surveyed said, this was in April of this year, were concerned about their ability to access capital. A year earlier, it was only 23%. That's a really, really high percentage. One of the things you can do is that you may need to change your business model, because you will not be able to depend on a bank to lend you that money because of all the different things. And again, they may lend it, but it's going to cost you 11% in some cases. I mean, that is an amazing number for an operating loan, a line of credit, et cetera. So these kind of things are happening. Be aware of them. Thank you to Ms. Simon for her great article she writes. And again, I encourage you, look her up, Ruth Simon. She writes for the Wall Street Journal and I'm sure other sources. Great information for us in small business. Well, the One Best Consult Tip of the Week, one I've been trying to talk about for some time, and it was about, entitled, Don't Forget About the Challenges That No One is Talking About. or lest we forget. Lots and lots of conversation. We got this rolling recession, which I think is hidden in plain view, and we talked about that today. But there are issues out there that we as businesses, we don't hear about it, and fortunately we don't think about it, and there are issues that can make a huge difference. The number one thing is, and I encourage everyone in small business that I work with, whether it's a CEO roundtable or whether it's individuals in my work as a Silver Fox advisor, you're going to have to try your best to understand broader economic conditions. In other words, you're going to have to spend a little bit of time, 15, 20, 30 minutes, I don't know what the time frame, and read Ruth Simon, read other resources, listen to podcasts. Try to stay up with what's going on in the economy. You don't need to take a test. You don't need to stand up in front of a crowd and give a speech on it. But you need to make sure you have a current understanding of what's going on. Federal Reserve, month to month, everybody watches. They're going to raise interest more. They're going to lower it. Some of this is a little too intense for me as a small business owner, but you need to be aware of things like that. Supply chain disruptions are still out there. And if you're not being impacted today, you very well could be impacted next month. They're still going on. They're not getting as much press as they used to, but look around. Look at some of the things you and your family buy. You put your ear to the ground, you're going to hear about something going on right now. Usually today, my experience in the last 6 to 12 months is price for something that you buy on a repetitive basis jumps unbelievable, 20, 30, 50%. And you wonder what the hell's going on. It's not a unique product, it's, or service, but when you back up and you take a look at it, switch, in my case, I've tried to find alternatives, but 6 months later, 3 months later, the prices drop back. That's a supply chain disruption. It's just a message that we're given. Labor shortages, rising energy cost. Who knows where we'll go with energy costs with all this push related to climate change that seems totally chaotic and out of control. These are the kind of things that you need to be aware of. A second thing is finding customers when your business is not a household name. That is so important of getting customers in. You need to do what you can do to optimize, to put your name out there, your website. Make sure it is the very best it can be in drawing people to it when they need your product and service. This, yes, means you need to engage a quality web designer company. There's some good companies in the market. For years, there were so many fakes. So many promised all this stuff they never could deliver. I'm talking about somebody you can get referred to, somebody else has used. It's not about the prettiest website, it's what's in the background, the SEO, the ability to draw people to that. And continuing your efforts, I hope your efforts, to establish yourself as an expert in your industry. And that leads into a third one I'll talk about today, and that's brand awareness. Making people aware of your brand, building loyalty, most importantly, building customer relations, step by step by step. We've all experienced that, and I hope most, if not all of you, do it. You take steps every day, and that doesn't mean taking a customer call with someone who's upset and you satisfy them. That's part of it, yes, but there are lots of things you can do to build a customer. And next week, I will share some of those that I've experienced, that I've been told about, that are simple in what you can do in your business to further build your relationships with your customers. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us today. Hope you've enjoyed the program. I want to thank Allen Crosby for coming in and sharing his business journey, as well as his adjustment and shift in his career and what he's doing, and taking all the stuff he's done in his life and putting it to work, continuing to put it to work. Please put a note in your calendar. Next week, 11 a.m. on Monday, we'll be right here. You can find us live at irlonestar.com, YouTube, Facebook, we've talked about it, and a copy of today's video and audio podcast will be available in a day or two. Just go to Facebook, YouTube, many other social and business sites, type in the Weekly Business Hour, and you can click and listen to our most recent program. Until next week, I encourage you, as always, stay engaged and keep your focus on what counts in your business. Thanks.
Does volunteering